So what we want to do now is start taking a look at an architectural pattern known as Model-View-ViewModel. And when we say architectural pattern, that's simply a fancy way of saying that this is a common approach we use for dealing with a commonly encountered issue. And in the case of Model-View-ViewModel, what this architectural pattern does is it decouples our data from our presentation. In other words, rather than binding the presentation layer directly to our data model, those two layers are going to be unaware of the details of the other one. So it creates separation between that presentation layer and our data model. And it does that by adding an intermediary. And this intermediary is a presentation-friendly layer over our data. In other words, it creates a representation of our data model that's designed specifically for tying it to the presentation layer. And for this reason, it's known as our view model. Because we have our view, which is the presentation layer, we have our underlying data, which is our model, and the view model presents that data model to the view layer. So let's see what this looks like in our application. So we have our item detail page, and in the Model-View-ViewModel architecture, that page serves as our view. We're going to have our view model, which is the intermediary. Then we have our data, which is the model. So in this architecture, that reference to our model, in this case the note, will be held by the view model. When it comes to accessing data from the data store, that'll also be handled by our view model. So we need that list of courses, the view model will look it up, and then the view model will store the reference to the resulting course list. So now all the data we need to display within our item detail page is accessible through our view model. So that allows us to go to the binding context for our page and simply set it to our view model. And then all the views within the page will simply inherit that binding context, and they'll have access to all the data they need through that single binding context. And in simplest terms, this is what the view model does. It creates this intermediary between our underlying data model and the presentation, which is the view. As we go along, we'll see there are a number of features and capabilities that come along with this architecture, but fundamentally it really does boil down to having a presentation-friendly layer over our model. Now, Model-View-ViewModel is not specific to Xamarin Forms, but when we're working in Xamarin Forms, there's a number of key capabilities that are provided by Visual Studio and Xamarin Forms itself. First of all, we have the view model classes, and these classes will provide our presentation-friendly layer over our data. And when we created our project, Visual Studio created some view model classes for us. It created one view model class for each of the pages within our application. So as we go along, we're going to specialize these view model classes for our application needs. Now, Visual Studio also generated another class called Base View Model. And as its name implies, it serves as the base class for our view model classes. So normally, each of our view model classes will inherit from this base view model class. And base view model class includes code that simplifies some of the common tasks we'll need to do when using this Model-View-ViewModel architecture. Now, Xamarin Forms itself also provides some help with working with this architecture, because Xamarin Forms provides services that handle some of the common management tasks and interaction tasks that we have to deal with when building cross-platform applications and working with a Model-View-ViewModel architecture. We'll see some of these services as we go throughout the rest of this course. Alright, so in our next clip, let's jump into Visual Studio, and we'll start converting our item detail page to use a Model-View-ViewModel architecture.